I never considered myself a jealous man. Trust is the foundation of any marriage, and for the better part of 8 years I thought we had plenty of it. My wife Jenna was everything to me. Smart, driven, and fiercely independent. That's what I loved about her. And when she got promoted to senior manager at her firm, I couldn't have been prouder. "It'll mean late nights sometimes, you know how it goes," she said with a tired smile one evening, sitting at our kitchen table. "I get it," I replied, pulling her close. "You've worked for this. I'll keep dinner warm when you're late." I meant it, or at least I thought I did. The first few weeks of her promotion seemed normal enough. Late nights at the office turned into the occasional dinner meeting. Then dinners turned into weekends spent catching up on big projects. I'd ask her about work, but she'd wave it off with a distracted sigh. "It's just stress, Liam. New position, new responsibilities." That was her answer to everything. Just stress. I might have let it slide if it weren't for the text. It came late on a Friday night. Jenna had fallen asleep on the couch, her phone still in her hand. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't. But when the screen lit up, the words practically screamed at me. "Working dinner Sunday. Don't forget who you belong to. See you soon. M." My heart sank. Who you belong to? I read it again, hoping I was imagining it. But there it was, staring at me like an open wound. Who you belong to. It didn't take long to piece it together. I knew about Martin, her boss. Everyone at her firm did. Big, arrogant, and wealthy, Martin had a reputation for getting what he wanted and for the way he looked at women. I'd met him once at an office holiday party. His handshake lingered too long, his smile too smug, and his eyes. They were the kind of eyes that undressed women while their husbands watched. I shook Jenna awake that night. "What's this?" I demanded, shoving the phone in her face. She blinked, confused. Then I saw it, a flash of panic. "Oh, it's nothing," she stammered, snatching the phone back. "Martin, he jokes like that sometimes." "That's a joke," I spat, my voice rising. "Sounds like more than a joke, Jenna." She got defensive the way guilty people do. "I told you it's nothing. Just let it go, Liam. Please." I tried to let it go. I really did. But something had shifted inside me. A seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew roots fast. That Sunday, Jenna left for her working dinner with Martin, promising she'd be home by 10. I didn't buy it, and so I made a plan. I knew where they'd be. A small upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I even knew the private table Martin liked to reserve, hidden in a corner behind heavy curtains. It was his little secluded office, as Jenna had once jokingly called it. The thought made me sick. I waited until I knew she'd been there long enough for Martin to get comfortable. Then I put on my best suit, grabbed the spare keys to Jenna's car, and headed downtown. I was calm, eerily calm. It was like I had stepped outside myself. The only thing I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears. I walked into the restaurant with purpose. The host, a wiry man in a bow tie, greeted me with a practiced smile. "Table for one, sir?" "Actually, I'm meeting someone," I replied. "Martin Reynolds. Private table." The host hesitated. Sir." They requested privacy. I gave him a look that could cut steel. "I'm sure they won't mind." His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but something about the way I was standing made him think better of it. "Right this way, sir." I followed him past diners sipping wine and twirling pasta until we stopped in front of the heavy curtains. I could hear their voices, Martin's deep, booming laugh and Jenna's softer tone. My stomach turned. The host looked at me nervously. "Would you like me to announce you?" "No need," I said coldly. I pushed the curtains aside and stepped inside. There they were. Jenna sat across from Martin, her face pale as I entered. Martin looked up from his plate of half-eaten spaghetti, his smile dripping with arrogance, until he saw me. "Liam," Jenna stammered, rising to her feet. "What are you doing here?" I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. My eyes were locked on Martin. "Hope I'm not interrupting," I said casually, my voice sharper than glass. Martin wiped his mouth with a napkin and leaned back in his chair, trying to recover. "Well, this is a surprise." He flashed that smug smile of his, the the same one I remembered from the holiday party. Jenna didn't mention you'd be joining us. That's funny? I shot back, pulling out an empty chair and sitting down. She didn't mention you owned her either. The smile faltered. Liam, stop, Jenna pleaded, her voice a desperate whisper. No. I turned to her for the first time. I won't stop. Not this time. Martin let out a forced chuckle. Look, Liam, you've got the wrong idea. This is just business. Business. I leaned forward, my voice low. Funny. I don't see any contracts on this table. I don't see any laptops or reports. What I do see, I glanced at the half-empty bottle of wine, is a man who thinks he can take whatever he wants just because he signs the paychecks. Martin's face turned red. You're out of line. I laughed. A bitter sound that surprised even me. No, you're out of line, Martin. You thought you could claim my wife like some trophy, and I wouldn't notice? That I'd just sit back and let it happen. Liam, please, Jenna interrupted, tears welling up in her eyes. Jenna, I said, my voice softening only for her. I trusted you. I believed in you. And you let him... I jabbed a finger toward Martin, who was now visibly sweating. Treat you like you were his property. She's here of her own choice, Martin said, though the confidence in his voice was gone. Is that right? I leaned back and smiled. A real cold smile. Well, maybe your wife would like to know what kind of man she married. The blood drained from Martin's face. You wouldn't dare, he hissed. Wouldn't I? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small voice recorder. Jenna gasped. Martin's eyes went wide. What the hell is that? He barked. Insurance, I said simply. See, I thought this might happen, so I recorded everything. All your texts, all your calls. Hell, Martin, you're not very subtle, you know that? A jury would eat you alive. Jenna stared at me, stunned. You did what? I ignored her. My focus was on Martin, who looked like a cornered animal now. Now, here's what's going to happen, I continued calmly. You're going to transfer Jenna to a new department immediately. You're going to stay as far away from her as humanly possible. And if you ever contact her again, I held up the recorder. This goes public. Your wife, your board, your reputation, all of it, gone. Martin's jaw worked, but no words came out. He was beaten and he knew it. Fine, he finally muttered. It's done. Good, I said, rising to my feet. Because if you so much as look at my wife again, Martin, you won't just lose your job. You'll lose everything. Jenna and I walked out of that restaurant in silence, the weight of everything crashing down around us. The car ride home was quiet, too quiet. She stared out the window, her face a mix of shame and sadness. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind was spinning, my heart aching, but there was nothing left to say. When we pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam, please, say something. I exhaled sharply and turned off the engine. What do you want me to say, Jenna? That everything's fine? That we can go back to the way things were? I shook my head. I don't know if I can do that. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid. I let things get too close, but I never. She broke off, covering her mouth as a sob racked her body. I never wanted to lose you. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But trust, once broken, doesn't just snap back into place. I loved you, Jenna, I said, my voice cracking. I still do. But I don't know if I can come back from this. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. The hurt in her eyes nearly undid me. Liam, I didn't let her finish. I got out of the car, walked to the front door, and stepped inside. The house felt different now. Colder, emptier, like the foundation of everything we'd built had crumbled beneath us. I had packed a bag before I left for the restaurant. I already knew, deep down, how this night would end. I grabbed it from the hall and turned back to Jenna, who was standing in the doorway, looking shattered. Where are you going? She whispered. Somewhere I can think, I replied. My voice broke on the last word. Liam, please, she cried, stepping forward. Don't go. We can fix this. I swear. I'll do anything. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Actions have consequences, Jenna. For both of us. And then I walked out. Martin lost his position a few months later. Turns out I wasn't the only one who had dirt on him. Once people realized he was vulnerable, more stories came out. More women. More threats. His downfall wasn't explosive. It was slow, agonizing, and inevitable. As for Jenna and me, we didn't make it. We tried for a while, but the trust was gone. The love was still there, but love isn't always enough. We divorced a year later. It was painful, but in the end, I found peace. Sometimes revenge doesn't look like a Hollywood ending. It's quieter, more deliberate. It's walking away with your dignity intact. It's reclaiming your power. And when you do, it's always satisfying.